They chained her to a post where the horses pissed. Flies gathered on her lips like she didn't matter. A hawk circled high above the town, screaming once then twice. And when it landed on her shoulder, it didn't move. They chained her where no one would look, behind the saloon, where the barrels leaked sour ale into mud, and the dogs came to lick the slop. Her wrists were bound with rusted iron and tied to a rotting post. She didn't cry out. Her back was straight, though her dress was torn and her lip was cracked. Dust clung to her cheek like a bruise that wouldn't wash. The midday sun beat down, but no one offered shade. 2 men passed by, glancing once before spitting and moving on. One said she was trouble. The other just shrugged and said, "Let her bake." No one told her crime. No trial was held. But the saloon owner said she had a tongue like sin and eyes like knives. That was enough. She had a ribbon once, they said, leather, soft, with a faded hawk feather tied to it. She wore it around her neck. The sheriff ripped it off when they dragged her from the chapel door and called her marked. That ribbon now lay in the dust near the barrels, half trampled by boots. No one picked it up. Flies buzzed thick around her mouth. Her knees bled where they scraped the wooden porch when she'd been hauled like a sack. Someone tossed a biscuit once. She didn't touch it, not even when the dog sniffed around, and one growled at her for it. Inside the saloon, laughter rose. Music played, but out back, the wind shifted, and the sound died as if swallowed. She lifted her face then, slowly like it hurt, and looked at the sky. There was a shadow circling. A hawk. It made no sound at first, just glided, wings spread wide, its pattern cutting across the burning blue. She blinked against the sun, and did not move. Then it screamed, sharp and sudden. It circled once, then again lower this time. People noticed. A few stepped outside the saloon, squinting. "Strange time for hawks," someone muttered. "It's just hunting," said another. But it wasn't. The hawk circled tighter. Then, with no warning, it dropped, silent as a knife. She flinched, but the bird didn't strike. It landed on her shoulder, claws dug into fabric and bone. She didn't wince. She didn't even breathe. The hawk settled, ruffled its feathers once, and stared straight ahead like a sentry. A child standing at the far end of the alley gasped and ran. A man leaned around the saloon corner to look, then cursed under his breath and went back inside. The bird didn't move. Minutes passed, then an hour, then 2. The saloon girls started whispering. "She still got that hawk on her? Looks like it chose her. That bird's mad." The owner came out once with a broom, waved it in the air. The hawk shrieked and snapped at him, beak flashing like steel. He backed away, cursing. She didn't say a word. By sundown, the bird still hadn't left. It shifted between her shoulders, sometimes flapping once to shake off flies, but always came back. She slept upright, head bowed forward, and the hawk perched as if carved from stone. That night, a drunk man stumbled into the alley. He saw her, squinted, and laughed. "Pretty bird you got there," he slurred, raising a bottle. "Is it yours, or are you his?" He stepped forward, bottle raised, but the hawk screeched and flew at him. It missed his eyes by inches. He fell back into the mud, screaming. The hawk returned. By morning, no one came near. The girl's lips were cracked, her eyes barely open, but the hawk was still there, watching, waiting, not for the town, for something else. The morning came gray and dull, with wind dragging dust across the alley like it was sweeping away the week. She sat where she'd been left, wrists bruised dark around the cuffs, knees raw from leaning too long. Her breath was thin, chest barely rising, but the hawk still stood on her shoulder. It had not moved through the night, not once. Flies came again. The bird flicked its wings and sent them scattering. Its eyes stayed sharp, scanning every movement, every sound. When the saloon door swung open and the cook dumped a bucket of bones, the hawk tilted its head and watched him until he hurried back inside. Some children came to look. One boy dared to step close. The hawk snapped its beak once, and he jumped back with a yelp. Another girl, barefoot, whispered, "It's her soul now. That bird. It's keeping her alive." Her mother grabbed her wrist and pulled her away fast. The preacher came around just before noon. He stared long at the girl and longer at the hawk. He carried his holy book in one hand and a rusty bell in the other. He rang it once and shouted something about sin, but his voice trembled and didn't carry far. The hawk lifted its wings wide, stretched them toward the sky like a warning. The preacher backed away, eyes wide. He didn't return that day. By afternoon, a storm was brewing. The wind changed again, colder this time. It kicked grit into eyes and dragged old paper down the main street. Men began boarding up windows just in case the rain came hard. Behind the saloon, the girl sat motionless, her hair tangled and caught in a chain link. The hawk began to fidget more now. It hopped down to the post beside her and pecked at the wood. Once, then again, then looked at her face and cried, a long, low sound like mourning. No one offered water. No one said her name. Inside the saloon, a card game stopped when one of the players caught sight of the hawk through a side window. "Still there," he said. "Haven't seen a bird that loyal since my ma's parrot outlived her." Someone laughed. Someone else muttered, "That bird ain't right." By evening, the town began to whisper. The sheriff's mare refused to enter the alley when he tried to patrol near the saloon. She reared and kicked until he gave up, said it wasn't worth the trouble. A young stable boy, not older than 10, said he saw the hawk circling again at night, even while still perched on her shoulder, as if there were two of them. That same night, a scream tore through the dark. A drunk staggered out of the alley with blood on his hand and claw marks across his coat. He claimed he only tried to move her, to see if she was still breathing. The hawk had lunged without warning, straight for his face. He showed the cuts. No one doubted him. After that, no one came near. The storm didn't break, but the clouds hovered low and heavy, and the wind carried voices where it shouldn't. Some swore they heard whispering from behind the saloon, not hers, not human, just whispering. The leather strap that had once held the feathers showed up again. A child found it near the outhouse. She brought it to the general store and asked if it was a spell. The owner said it wasn't his business and threw it out back. The strap landed in the dirt near the girl, though she couldn't reach it. The hawk turned its head and stared at the strap. It stayed like that for hours. No one mentioned the girl's name, but they started calling her the Chain One. They said the bird was her punishment. Others said it was her protector. One woman said she dreamed of wings and fire, and that the alley smelled of old smoke now, even though no one lit a fire nearby. The girl had not eaten in days. Her lips had split open. Her chin dropped against her chest by nightfall. But still the hawk didn't leave. It cleaned her hair. It watched the doors. It chased the rats away. Once, just before midnight, it screamed into the sky, so loudly a window cracked in the saloon's backroom. Someone swore they saw lightning behind the hills, but no thunder followed. The next morning, someone left a crust of bread near the post. Not too close, just within sight. The hawk looked at it, then looked at the person who left it, and didn't move. Another girl tried to leave a cup of water, but her mother slapped it from her hands. "You don't feed what you don't understand," she said, eyes fixed on the post. The hawk stayed through the night again, and the girl didn't move. Only once, when a wind came colder than it should have, did she raise her head slightly and meet the hawk's eyes. And in that moment, something passed between them. Not words, not pain, just knowing. The third day began with no sunrise, just a pale, sick-colored light that barely reached over the rooftops. The saloon cast a long shadow down the alley, slicing the mud in half like a scar. She sat in that shadow, legs curled under her, wrists still chained, skin now the color of ash. The hawk hadn't left. It perched near her again, claws clinging to the broken post, eyes sharp as ever. People no longer asked if she was alive. They simply avoided the alley. Children were forbidden to go near. A new sign was nailed to the saloon's back wall, and no entry. No one said who wrote it, but everyone obeyed. Inside the saloon, the piano player left halfway through his tune. He claimed he couldn't focus with the noise outside, but there was no noise, only the soft shuffle of feathers when a hawk moved. And yet, he swore he heard whispers behind the walls, behind the wind, in the floorboards. They sounded like her, he said, but it wasn't her. The woman behind the bar began sleeping in the cellar. She said her dreams were filled with shadows that looked like wings, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw the girl's face, not bleeding, not broken, just watching. In the alley, the girl's head was tilted slightly to the side, not all the way down like before. Her lips were open now, not to speak, just to breathe, barely. The hawk began circling again each morning, a perfect spiral over the saloon roof, like it was drawing something no one could see. It never flew far, always returned to her side. Then came the first true sign. Someone knocked over a barrel behind the saloon. It spilled not just ale, but something darker, something thick like blood, but not quite. No one admitted to it. No one cleaned it up. By nightfall, the stain was still there, and flies were swarming like a warning. The hawk avoided that part of the alley. It wouldn't cross the line where the liquid spread. That same night, the dogs stopped barking. All of them. Every dog in town, silent. People said it was the air. Others said the wind had gone wrong. A woman whispered that her baby cried every time a hawk screamed, even when the hawk hadn't made a sound. The sheriff came to look. Finally, he brought 2 men with him. They stood just outside the alley. One of them tossed a stone toward the girl. It bounced near her foot. She didn't flinch, but the hawk flapped up, screamed once, and vanished into the sky. The men turned to leave, laughing, until they saw it return. Fast, silent, it landed on the sheriff's saddle and dug its claws into the leather. Deep, when it flew off, it left holes behind. The sheriff didn't say a word. He just mounted his horse and rode back toward the station. No one spoke of it again. Then came the print, in the dust near her feet after the wind settled that night. Someone found a mark. Not hers, not the bird's. It was too big, too sharp, like a hoof but twisted. One side had clawed toes, the other curved like a blade. A saloon girl found it while dumping scraps. She stared at it for a full minute before backing away slowly and crossing herself. That was when the townsfolk truly began to whisper. They say she wasn't always like that, someone murmured by the general store. Used to be quiet, helped the church, gave bread to dogs. No one gives bread for nothing. They say she touched something she shouldn't be. A book, maybe. Or a man. Or a bird. One child said she saw smoke rise from the girl's hands at night, even while chained. Another swore the hawk's eyes glowed when the moon hit them. People laughed, but their voices didn't carry far. Something about the wind made even jokes sound like warnings. The broken leather strap, the one with the feather, was still lying near the post. No one had touched it. The rain had turned the leather stiff, but the feather stayed whole. Somehow, even in the wind. And still she sat, still didn't speak, still watched, until the 5th night. That was when the wind truly changed. It howled low between the buildings, as if something was walking through town wearing the sky. Horses kicked in their stalls. Lamps flickered, even without touch. Someone claimed the air smelled like iron. Another said it smelled like feathers burning. In the alley, the hawk stepped down from the post and moved closer to the girl. It touched its beak to her forehead, gently, like a kiss. Then it stared at the sky and screamed. Once, loud, long echoing. The wind stopped. The town held its breath. And then, nothing. The girl opened her eyes. Just barely. No one saw it happen. But by morning, the strange print in the dirt had vanished, and in its place, a perfect circle of feathers. Ask ChatGPT. The morning came red. not with sun but with smoke. A strange haze settled over the rooftops, low and clinging, the kind that didn't move with the wind. The air smelled scorched, but nothing had burned. Not yet. Behind the saloon, the girl still sat slumped against the post, her wrists bloodied from the cuffs. Her dress was torn at the hem, and her feet bare in the mud. The hawk had not left her side. It stood on the ground now, right next to her, wings slightly spread, as if guarding her body from the rising heat. Its feathers shimmered faintly, as if the light had changed and no one told a bird. A breeze passed, and with it came ash, tiny specks that shouldn't have been there. The alley had no fire, and yet flakes fell from the sky like black snow. Someone in town screamed, far off but sharp. Then silence. The saloon door opened halfway before closing again. Through the gap, a pair of eyes watched the alley. They didn't blink. They just stared. The child who once brought the leather strap came again, this time crawling low behind the barrels. She peeked around the corner and saw the girl, not dead, not quite awake. Her lips moved. Maybe a name. Maybe not. The child didn't speak. She held out the strap, tied now in a loose knot, with the hawk's feathers sticking out like a warning. She tossed it gently, and it landed near the girl's thigh. The hawk stepped forward, picked up the strap in its beak, and placed it in her lap. Thunder cracked, but the sky was clear. The wind returned. It came in fast, sweeping down from the hills like a wave. The sky behind the saloon turned a deep orange, then a sickly yellow. That's when people saw it. Flames on the ridge. Too far to hear the burn, but close enough to see the smoke billow like a rising beast. No one had lit that fire. They said the lightning started it. But there had been no lightning. The town changed fast. Men ran for buckets. Horses kicked in panic. Windows slammed. Mothers called children inside. But the alley remained untouched. The flame on the ridge crept downward, steady as breath. Still, no one approached the girl. She hadn't stood in days. And yet, her head slowly lifted. Not all the way, just enough to see. The hawk moved closer and screeched, loud, like it meant to wake something older than sound. It pecked at the chain. Once. Twice. It began clawing where the iron met wood. The post cracked softly. Inside the saloon, the owner shouted for someone to board the windows. But the nails bent, the hammer snapped, and the curtains caught fire from the inside. No spark, no match, just flame. The sheriff returned. His coat was wet with sweat, his face pale as dust. He stopped halfway down the alley, unable to speak. He looked at the hawk, then the girl, then the sky. His hand trembled when he reached for his revolver, not to shoot, but just to hold something. "Let it burn," someone whispered behind him. "It's not our fire." The hawk cried again. It grabbed the chain with its talons and pulled. Nothing moved. It flew upward, circled once above the alley, then dove straight down, beak first. It struck the chain lock with such force that blood splattered from its beak. But it didn't stop. Again, then again. The metal bent, just slightly. The girl coughed. It was dry, broken, but real. The alley floor began to shimmer, not from heat, from light, a glow, pale and gold, like candlelight underwater. It spread beneath her feet in a perfect circle. The ash in the air stopped falling. Time slowed. Then the hawk screamed one last time and drove its beak into the lock. It snapped. The chain dropped. The sound was louder than the fire. She didn't move right away. Her hands were limp, her head bowed, but the hawk hopped up to her knee and pecked her gently, once on the wrist, then on the shoulder. She stirred. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened, fully this time. The fire reached the edge of the saloon. The roof burst into flame. And yet, the alley remained untouched. She reached down, picked up the leather strap of the feather, and held it in her palm. The wind died. The fire stopped. Not burned out, not smothered. It just ended mid-flame, and the silence that followed made every man in town kneel, because when she stood, no chain on her arms, the hawk rose with her, and the sky opened, not with thunder, but with wings. The town didn't speak the next morning, not because they had nothing to say, but because the words no longer made sense. The fire had vanished. The sky had cleared. The saloon was burned to the beams, yet the alley behind it was untouched, dry, clean, still holding the smell of ash but no sign of heat. And she was gone. Only the broken chain remained, coiled on the dirt like a shed skin. The post leaned slightly, splintered where the hawk had struck it. Blood stained the wood, fresh and dark. No one touched it. They found feathers scattered in a perfect spiral around the spot she had been, all the same size, all the same pale gold at the tips. The sheriff bent down to pick one, but stopped. His hand hovered, then dropped. He backed away without a word. The child who had brought the strap was the first to speak. She whispered that the girl had left in the smoke, that the hawk took her up, not away, that the sky had folded to let her pass. The grown-ups told her to hush, but no one looked her in the eyes. Behind the general store, 2 horses refused to eat. They stared toward the hills where the fire had started. Their ears were flat. Their legs shook. The stable boy said the animals had gone silent at the same moment the chain had fallen. The bartender's wife found the strap again, lying just outside her garden. It was dry, clean, the feather tied tight in a knot, unchained by wind or flame. She hung it on a nail outside her door, but by morning it was gone again. That night the wind returned. It didn't whistle. It carried something quieter, breath-like, words half-formed, a voice that wasn't speaking, just remembering. The alley remained empty, but the hawk returned. It came with the moon, landed on the broken post, and stared down the alley toward the town square. Its wings were folded. Its chest rose slow and steady. Its eyes reflected the lanterns even when they weren't lit. People began leaving small things at the edge of the alley. A tin cup, a folded scarf, a piece of bread. No one said why. They just did. Some came alone. Others came in pairs. None crossed a line where the spiral of feathers had been. The dirt there was still smooth, as if untouched by boots. Even the dogs walked around it. Then, on the 3rd night, someone saw her, not in town, not close, but standing near the ridge, outlined by the moonlight. Her dress was whole now, her wrists unmarked, and on her shoulder the hawk perched silent. She didn't come back. She didn't wave. She only stood, and the sky behind her shimmered faintly, like heat-off stone, even in the cold. The child saw her first. She called to her mother, but by the time anyone else looked, the girl was gone again. Back in town, someone carved the post into a marker. They didn't know what to write, so they left it blank, just polished the splintered wood and hammered it deeper into the ground. They say that at night, if you sit in the alley and don't speak, you can hear feathers rustle overhead. They say the chain never rusted. They say she wasn't punished. She was tested, and when she passed, the sky remembered. The hawk returned again the next evening. Not for long, just enough to circle once, then vanish into the trees. But on the post, someone noticed something new. The broken leather strap had returned, wrapped around the wood, tied in a perfect knot, and tucked into the knot was a single perfect feather. By the 6th day, the alley behind the saloon no longer felt like part of town. The shadows there moved differently. The wind blew through it, but never lingered. No one dumped slop behind the barrels anymore. No one lit a lantern near it. No one even whispered when they passed. The burned saloon still stood black and hollow, but its back door was sealed shut with boards nailed in silence. The post still stood where she'd been chained, though now it looked more like a marker than a punishment. The chain had been coiled neatly at its base, untouched since the day it fell. The leather strap with the feather hung down the side, tied with care. It didn't flutter in the wind. It stayed still, like it was waiting for something. The sheriff walked the alley once at dawn. He stepped to the edge of the feather circle, but didn't cross. He stood with his hat in hand and said nothing. Then he turned around and left without looking back. That day he closed the jail. Never gave a reason. The hawk came back that night. No fire in the hills. No clouds in the sky. Just a soft rustle of feathers as it glided in and landed on the post. It stood there, wings tucked, eyes facing the town square. Still as stone. It came every evening now, always just after sunset, always alone. Sometimes it stayed for minutes, other times until the stars disappeared into morning. Children left little gifts, polished stones, corn kernels, twine woven into braids. None were touched, but none were blown away, either. It was as if the wind stepped around them. No one ever spoke her name. They didn't know it. Or if they did, they'd forgotten it, like a name buried too deep in the dust to ever dig back out. They called her the girl with the hawk, or the chained one, or simply her. But when the hawk came back each night, they didn't call it anything. They just watched. Once, a traveler asked what happened, why the burned saloon stood untouched, why the alley had no footprints. An old man spat and said, "That hawk don't wait for answers. It waits for silence." No one laughed. One evening, the hawk arrived earlier than usual. The sky still held color. People were just lighting lamps. It landed on the post, looked straight ahead, then tilted its head upward toward the hills. And there, for a brief second, they saw her, far beyond the rooftops, barely more than a shadow against the ridge. But it was her, standing where the fire had once come down. Same tattered dress, now whole. Same bare feet in the dirt. Same stillness. The hawk lifted off, circled once, then landed again. It didn't move after that. The girl didn't wave. She just stood, and slowly, like the wind bending to her breath, she faded into the twilight. The post behind the saloon stayed. The feather strap stayed. And the hawk kept coming. Some nights, it would stretch its wings wide across the post. Other nights, it would crouch low, eyes closed like it was listening to something beneath the ground. They say the alley grew colder after she vanished. That even in summer, you needed a coat to pass behind the saloon. They say the hawk doesn't age, that its feathers never dull, that it waits not for her to return, but for someone else to be brave enough to kneel where she once sat. And they say, if the wind is just right, you can hear the sound of a chain dropping, over and over, like it's still breaking, and always will be,